Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for Mad Men Season 7, Episode 6, The Strategy. And this was a fantastic episode. I really love this episode. Probably the best episode of the season. Just, wow, what a great episode. As usual, fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to next week's finale, which should be really, really big because, you know, next week's, not season finale, next week's mid-series finale will determine how the rest of the show will go. So, I mean, it's really, really important that we get that, you know, series finale, next year. It's, mid-series finale. So yeah, let's get to this episode because I really, really enjoyed it. Basically, the episode, we didn't see a lot of Don's plot in this episode. It focused a lot more on Peggy, Pete, and also, Joan. Joan had a little something as well, so let's go to Peggy first. Peggy and the newest creative guy, John Mathis, this is probably a guy that's working for her. They're in the Midwest and they're doing research. They're buying the meals for Burger Chef customers, and in return, they're asking them, their customers to take a survey. They give a harried mother in a station wagon an extra $10 to answer a few questions. That was literally the beginning of the episode. I thought it was pretty good, the way they did that. Don, in the meantime, is hurriedly cleaning up a table in his apartment, moving his typewriter, some files, and some papers. He's then in his office, and Bonnie enters, and she tells Don he is the only one she knows in New York, and says she hears he has a huge apartment, and Pete arrives and tells Don that Peggy is going to be leading them through the work she has done for Burger Chef, and invites Don along. Bonnie leaves, and Pete and Don proceed to the boardroom. There, Peggy and Stan are preparing the presentation. Wasn't Stan, like, wasn't he sent to the mental asylum in the last episode? I thought he was. Pete then announces, I've asked Don to join us. Peggy recovers quickly, and notes that, Dawn's work has indeed been instrumental. So she notes that her research showed that her mother's guilt showed that mothers feel guilty, and basically what she's basically talking about what they're about going to Burger Chef. So the pitch must focus on giving homemakers permission. Lou interpolates gleefully who gives moms permission, and Peggy goes on to give a nuclear family-based pitch in which a harried mother with her two children in the backseat of a car arrive at Burger Chef. She gets out of the car and a man meets her with a bag of food. She kisses him and we discover it's her husband. Don says it's right on strategy, it's exactly what they want, and Lou's delight with a traditional family-based concept. So I thought that was definitely pretty cool the way they did that. One of the things I love in Mad Men is, like, the way they present ads. You kind of see, yeah, that sounds like a good commercial. And that definitely did sound like a good commercial for the time. So, I mean, I really enjoyed that scene because, you know, we got to see more of what her vision was for it. And we got to see where she wanted to go with it. So I definitely thought that was a really important scene, a really good scene, in my opinion. So, Pete is then in Lou's office. He wants Don to, Roger is in a steam room at the New York, we'll get to Roger in a second. Pete is in Lou's office. He wants Don to lead the pitch to Burger Chef. Peggy is called in to give her assent. Don will give authority. You have a motion, says Pete. I have authority, Peggy says. Don gives a motion. Ted then chimes in on speakerphone from L.A., Peggy is thrown off balance, but finally agrees to let Dawn take the lead, but she is clearly miffed. If you think George Payton would prefer it, Pete is delayed and crows. She's every bit as good as any woman in the business. You know, Pete was sure that Dawn would be better for leading the position, so now Dawn's going to be leading it, which I'm happy for him, because it took him a little while to get that big position back, but now he's finally actually doing something. Peggy enters into Don's office, and she tells him that he should give the presentation to Burger Chef. He asks whose idea this is, and Peggy lies and says that she came up with the idea, probably because she just doesn't want him to think she didn't want to support him. I think that's kind of what it is. She didn't want him to think she doesn't support him, because she does. Don mentions he's been noodling around with rewriting the pitch from the kid's perspective, and he says, "Mom, can we go to Burger Chef?" Peggy tells him that the pitch is set and leaves his office only to spot. That's the pitch, is that it's called "Mom, can we go to Burger Chef?" So, guess who comes there? Megan arrives. She's by Marsha's desk, and Peggy greets Megan and introduces her to Marsha. Marsha says, "I didn't know Don was married." Megan's face falls. Peggy shows Megan her office, and Megan's pretty impressed. She says, "Sooner or later you're going to get Don's, aren't you?" Peggy says that Don's office is right next door. Stan stops in, and it becomes clear that he and Megan have visited Ginsburg, but Peggy has not. So Don then arrives, appears surprised, and then Megan says she'd like them to go to dinner downtown. They leave, and Stan says wistfully, "I miss her." Peggy's expression moves Stan to ask if she is mad at him, and Peggy says goodnight, Stan. So then what happens is that Peggy wakes up in the middle of the night. She gets a file, and the file is the Burger Chef presentation. She leafs through it and then throws it on the floor. So Don wakes up, and Megan is settling out breakfast. Don gets up and embraces Megan, and he says, "Tell me you didn't miss this." She says, "I missed you. We're going to eat this delicious breakfast, and I'm going to take you shopping." And we can definitely see that, he's trying to be the best husband that he can be to her, and I think that's really great, because I'm glad that it is kind of starting to work out for them. I'm happy about that. We then see Peggy in the office on Saturday. She calls Stan. She is very dissatisfied with the Burger Chef presentation. She's very dissatisfied. She doesn't know if it's going to work. She asks if Stan is coming in. He obviously has plans. We both know there's a better idea. There's always a better idea. And she's trying to come up with a better idea, 'cause she does not know if the idea they have is the best. So she then calls Don, and she tells him that his idea about the kid's perspective is not a good idea. So she then asks why he is undermining her, and claims the presentation is now poisoned because he expressed his discontent with it. So Megan is in the closet. She explains to Don that she is looking for a fondue pot, and when he says that they will go out to dinner, she explains that she wants to take it back to LA. "I miss my things," she says. Don notes that she is packing most of her clothes. She appeared surprised when he says he plans to visit her in LA in late July, and offers to bring some of her clothes with him. She announces that she'd rather meet him somewhere else where there's nothing going on. Not here, not LA. So possibly what they're setting up is that Megan's gonna move somewhere else, and they're gonna be there, and people aren't gonna think they're together, but secretly they are together. I don't really know. It seems just like she wants to be, she doesn't care about her career as much anymore. She cares more about her marriage with Don, which I guess is understandable. So we get a really great scene with Don and Peggy. I personally love this scene. I loved it. Dawn arrives in Peggy's office. She's still struggling with revising the Burger Chef presentation, and she wants him to explain how he thinks. And she says, "You can't tell people what they want." And Dawn says, "You can't tell people what they want. It has to be what you want." And then Peggy says, "First I abuse the people whose help I need, then I take a nap. Then I start at the beginning again, and I see if I end up in the same place." So they're going back and forth with variations on a nuclear family-based pitch for a Burger Chef, and she says, "Moms love Burger Chef because it is an answer to crisis," says Peggy, still trying to refocus to the presentation. But after she tries out a scenario in which a mother's coming home from work, Dawn seems very skeptical about a woman working. Peggy then reminds Dawn that he is surrounded by mothers who work, and when Dawn claims that idea is too sad for an ad, Peggy adds in exasperation, "Does this family exist anymore?" Then she admits that she has just turned 30 and kept it secret, and now that she has become a woman who lies about her age, Dawn tells Peggy that, "I worry about a lot of things, but I don't worry about you." So when Peggy asks what he does worry about, he says, I never did anything and that I don't have anyone. And when Peggy talks about doing research for Burger Chef and seeing all of those mothers with children, she asks, "What did I do wrong?" And Don says, "You're doing great." And then Peggy says, "What if there was a place you could go and there was no TV and you could just break bread and whoever you were sitting with was family? That's it." And after a pause, you hear a song playing in the background, and you hear the song "My Way" by Frank Sinatra. That song's playing, and he says that basically, Don says, "Do you hear this?" She says, they play it all the time." And Don says, "You think it's a coincidence? It's a coincidence?" And then he says, come on, let's dance to it." And Peggy then rests her head on Don's shoulder, and he kisses the top of her head. So that definitely is a pretty big thing. I don't think we're getting like a relationship with Don and Peggy or anything, but I definitely like the friendship between them in this episode. You know, we really got to see how alike they are. Because if you think about it, they really are alike in a lot of ways. So we got to see that in this episode, which I thought was really cool. I like seeing how alike the two of them are. Because they really are alike. So, the episode ends with Peggy and Don and Pete. They meet at Burger Chef, and Peggy wants to shoot the "It's Not a Home," the ad there. And Pete says it's not a home, it's better. A clean, well-lighted place. And Pete rolls his eyes and says, "Thanks, Hemingway." But Peggy says, "Every table here is the family table." Don concurs, saying she's doing it the way she wants to do it. You want it right or not. As the camera field opens up to a wide shot of the Burger Chef restaurant, lit up like a clean little house, filled with different kinds of families, Don gestures towards Pete, indicating he has something like ketchup on his cheek. Peggy laughs and Pri offers a napkin. So, what they've decided to do is that it's not going to be about mothers, it's going to be about family, which I think is really good. And I really like the main plot. I thought it was definitely really, really strong. And I really like all the scenes with Don and Peggy. I really enjoyed that a lot. And I'm really looking forward to, I really enjoyed the main plot. Alright, let's go over to Pete, because Pete had a lot to do in this episode. Pete and Bonnie, they're on a flight to New York. And Bonnie is discussing the cost of 7 nights in a hotel, plus theater tickets, and Pete assures her that everything is fine, and that everything is free, and tells her he wants her to be shopping all day and screwing all night. She offers to buy him a pair of loafers, and Pete explains he will be spending some of Saturday in Costco, and he's going to be visiting his daughter Tammy. He doesn't want Bonnie along, even though Bonnie bought the Barbie Pete is giving Tammy, because it might confuse her. So when Bonnie notes that the fact that her parents are still not divorced, it's more likely to confuse Tammy. Pete says, "I thought you were never going to get married again." And Bonnie deflects the comment by rubbing Pete's crotch and telling him to meet her in the restroom. "I've always wanted to do that." And basically, talking about the Mile High Club, which if you don't know what the Mile High Club is, it's basically sex in an airplane, which is a lot of couples do that. So yeah, that's what he's talking about. So next we see, basically, Pete is in Lou's office. I already talked about this. Alright. So, Roger is in a steam room at the New York Athletic Club with Jim Hubert from McCann. They engage in that Fox-friendly, hostile banter at which Roger excels. Among other things, Jim needles Roger about Burger Chef. "It's not Buck, but it's cute." Roger leaves. So, the GMX from Detroit arrive, and they are there to talk about the new Chevy XP accounts. They talk with Bob and Ken and Joan. I'll get to Joan in a second, but what happens next is that, Pete arrives at Trudy's with the Barbie doll that Bonnie purchased for him to give it to Tammy. The maid, Verna, brings Tammy to see Pete. Trudy's at the hairdresser. Tammy hides behind Verna and seems shy and very fearful, despite Pete's hearty announcement that, that's her dad. So, I think it's kind of that, she thinks that probably because, Trudy has talked to her saying, "Oh, he's a terrible man, don't trust him, he's gonna do all this bad shit to you," basically. That's probably what she said to him. So, Pete's at Trudy's, and Trudy's not home. Verna explains that she went out. Pete tells Verna to give Tammy a bath, and that when he will tuck her in, he calls Bonnie at the hotel and tells her he is Wayland in Costco, and that she should go to a Broadway show, Calcutta, alone, since he must look after Tammy. "I'll make it up to you," he says. You most certainly will," Bonnie replies. So Pete gets what appears to be another beer, and Trudy walks in. He accused her of going out with Charlie Fiddick, who I have no idea who that is. She's incredulous. You've seen your daughter for the year. Don't you have a plane to catch? And he accuses her of being manipulative and trying to get him back. I know your debutante maneuvers, he claims. When she straightforwardly reminds him that they are getting divorced, he calls her immoral for going out on a date when she has a child. You're not part of this family anymore, she snaps. He mashes his beer bottle into a cake on the counter, and then he leaves. So, that's a pretty big scene. So, Pete is then in the hotel room. Bonnie arrives with a shopping bag. She is miffed that he already ate by calling him room service. And she's also displeased that her feet are dirty from walking around New York in sandals. This is my vacation, she claims. I'm induded. He counters, I don't like you in New York, says Bonnie. Then you don't like me. He tries to touch her, but she says you can't fuck your way out of this. So that was a pretty big thing. I thought that was definitely really big. So that was a pretty big scene, as I said. We then see Bonnie is on a plane back to LA. She's alone, and a few seats back, so is Megan. So, I'm kind of thinking that Megan might end up leaving Don because she's all alone, and she's always alone, so maybe Megan's gonna leave Don in the finale. We'll have to see. I don't really know. I guess we'll just have to see. But I did like the comparisons between them in this episode. Now, let's go to Joan. Joan actually had a lot to do in this episode. This is by far the episode where Joan has had a lot to do. Because Joan is leaving for work. She turns off the television, tells her mother to take Kevin outdoors today. And, yeah, so Roger's in his steam room at the New York Athletic Club with Jim Hobbert from McCann. They engage in that Fox-friendly, hostile banter. And Roger excels, among other things. Jim needles Roger about Burger Chef. It's not fuck, but it's cute. Roger leaves. The GMX from Detroit arrived there. They're there to talk about the new Chevy XP account. They chat with Bob and Ken and Joan. They get very uncomfortable, and Ken talks about his young son crawling out everyone. And you've really got to keep an eye on him. Bill, if GM, is especially very flirtatious with Joan. And as the GM execs walk off, Bob asks Joan if he can come over Sunday to visit with her. And Kevin and even her mother. And he says, I want to see everyone. So she doesn't know what to think at this point. So Roger and Jim talk about the Commander account. Roger called Les Clark, the brand commander of Commander Brand. So Bob is awoken from sleep by a call. It's the police. Bill Hartley, one of the GM executives, has been arrested. So Bob posts Ball has been Ball for a beating and Bloody Bill. The police sergeant assumes Bob is Bill's lover and makes a point announcing that Bill tried to felicitate an undercover officer. Good night, ladies. He mocks in a cab with Bob. Bob observes, I know you could keep this to yourself. He is sure Bob is also gay. Ever been arrested? He asks. Bob says no. Bill says, I'm going to miss having you around. Bob thinks that Bill is threatening to out him, and Bill reassures Bob that there is no threat to him. Sterling Cooper is not getting the Chevy XP account because GM is doing it in his house. And I think that's a pretty big thing because Bill finally asks Bob, how do you live in the city? So much temptation and it's hard, Bob says. So, what comes next? Bob arrives at Joan's apartment with flowers for her and a gift from Kevin. It's an erector set. He says he tried to get a gift for Joan on Saturday, but everything was closed. Joan's mother accuses him with the jewels close everyone on Saturday. She clearly does love his flowers. So, Bob and Joan are drinking wine. Her mother is in bed. Bob explains that although he claimed earlier that he did not get Joan a gift, he really did. He opens a box with a ring in it and offers it to her. He kisses her, but Joan pulls away. She says, you don't want this. You shouldn't be with a woman. Bob explains that he's going to be moving to Detroit for a job for Buck, and they expect him to be a certain kind of executive. And Joan says, we lost Chevy? And Bob says, yes. But the audition was a success, and there's something else coming down the road. Joan still shows no interest in Bob's pitch, so Bob turns up the pressure and asks, is this what you want? A 2-bedroom apartment for your mother and your little boy? I'm offering you what no one else ever will. Joan keeps her temper and says calmly, I want love. I'd rather die hoping that happens than make some arrangement. You should too. I'm just being realistic. And then Joan says goodnight. So she just rejected his little proposal to her. He was going to propose to her, but she rejected it. So I'm actually happy that she rejected, because I didn't think that, because honestly, I don't think she would do that. So then the very biggest scene is that we see that Jim notes that they've lost the Chevy account. He suggests that the firm should go on the offensive and place an ad in the New York Times announcing that they have the IBM 360. And guess who's the new partner? Harry Crane. He's the new partner. So Don and Bert and Pete agree with Jim and vote in Harry. Joan is furious, though. She's furious. Roger storms out. Jim counter votes his abstentions, and Joan joins Roger in his office. He asks her how she knew about the loss of Chevy. She admits about the loss of Chevy. She admits that Bob told her, and that Bob will be taking a job at Buick. So Roger then realizes what Jim Hubert from McCann was hinting about. He was afraid that Sterling Cooper will steal the Buick idea account for them. So they've now lost Chevy. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought this episode was definitely really, really strong. There was a lot going on in this episode. There's a lot of tension now between, you know, Bob and Sterling Cooper. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. Let me just say, the season finale, the mid-series finale promo, we have no scenes from the next episode. Which means one thing. It's an explosive finale, definitely. That's what it's going to mean. It's going to mean it's an explosive mid-series finale. And clearly the reason we're not getting anything is because if they show us one little thing, they're going to spoil the entire episode for us. So that's why they're not showing it to us. Which, I think that's pretty awesome, because I just really hope this finale pays off. I love this episode. By far the best episode of the season. By far best episode of the season. I love the Don and Peggy scenes. Do you like Don and Peggy working together? Do you think that Don will get his position back? Don basically does have a position back, because now he's working on an idea and he's the head of it, so I think that's pretty good, and I like Don and Peggy scenes. Is Megan possibly going to leave Don? I'm thinking she might. Bonnie, I think, is going to leave Pete. We'll have to see what happens there. What's going to happen with the Chevy account now? We'll have to see what happens there. Also, we didn't see Betty and Sally in this episode, so what's going to happen there, we'll have to see, but that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for 24, so see you then. Bye.